E sate numa mesa de café, olhar perdido na espuma do meu cappuccino, quando meu telefone vibrou na mesa. Era uma mensagem da minha mãe, um convite para uma reunião de família. O tipo de reunião que, para mim, ecoava como uma sirene de emergência, trazendo à superfície um mar de inseguranças que eu pensava ter controlado. O convite carregava uma aura de expectativa. Não seria maravilhoso todos juntos novamente? O frio na minha espinha sentiu-se mais apertado que antes. As palavras pulsaram em meus pensamentos como o farfalhar de folhas secas, ressoando memórias que eu tinha tentado enterrar. Por que estou sempre tão ansiosa por esses encontros? A pergunta golpeou como um punho na minha mente. Lembrei-me de como, durante aquelas reuniões, eu era muitas vezes invisível, um fantasma vagando na sala, enquanto minha mãe oferecia elogios a meu irmão. Ele era o filho idealizado, sempre sob os holofotes, enquanto eu aprendia a me esconder na sombra, fazendo com que a invisibilidade se tornasse meu segundo nome. Por que o silêncio deles grita mais alto que as palavras? A reflexão brotou, um sussurro que ecoava em meu interior. Eu me via procurando calma em meio a um mar de expectativas não faladas, pressentindo o peso que a necessidade de aprovação exerce sobre mim. Ao longo dos anos, apliquei espaço suficiente em minha vida para este padrão, mas um clamor silencioso ainda pulsava dentro de mim, questionando tudo. É minha culpa? Minha inadequação? Ou são as expectativas da minha família que me esmagam? Com cada pensamento, a ansiedade se transformava em um manto quente e pesado. A ideia de estar na presença deles, sentir o olhar crítico por trás de sorrisos superficiais, me deixou tensa. Lembrei-me do olhar desaprovador da minha mãe, aquele imenso abismo entre nós. O prêmio mais íntimo que eu poderia oferecer, amor e aceitação, não parecia ser suficiente. Cresci ouvindo frases repetidas que punham em dúvida meu lugar na família. Se você apenas fosse mais como seu irmão. O eco das suas palavras sempre retornava, marcando minha alma. A realidade se tornou um ciclo vicioso, um convite seguido por minhas fraquezas expostas. Um desejo profundo de me afastar para longe se misturava com meu impulso de aparência. Como social worker, eu ajudava outras pessoas a superar suas feridas, a encontrar seu caminho, mas olhei no espelho e quase não reconheci a mulher que ali estava. Quais feridas eu realmente estava curando? À medida que a tarde se transformava em noite, olhei pela janela em direção ao céu escuro, as estrelas já a brilhar. Elas me faziam recordar da luz que uma vez percebi em minha própria vida, mas que agora pareciam distantes. Uma parte de mim ansiava por conexão, por finalmente me sentir vista e aceita. Mas que parte? Com o coração pesado, percebi que todas essas emoções eram as chaves que guardava em um lugar secreto dentro de mim. Mas que agora eu precisava confrontar em busca da minha verdadeira voz, na luta incessante contra as sombras que, muitas vezes, encarei como minhas únicas companheiras. Era a hora de quebrar o silêncio, dar sentido ao meu passado, para que pudesse finalmente encontrar a luz que ainda se escondia atrás de meus medos. A torrential rain poured outside, a lament from the sky that echoed my inner state. As I flipped through an old photo album in search of a glimmer of joy, I stumbled upon an image that froze time. Me, sitting on the living room floor in a floral dress my mother insisted I wear. Around me, smiling faces, my family, while my brother, the center of attention, tore through presents with sparkling eyes. My smile, in contrast, appeared fragile, an effort desperately made to fit into that scene. Memories of those birthday parties still burned within me like an open wound. I remembered how my father tried to be the anchor amidst the whirlwind of laughter, while my mother stood out for her subtle critiques. Sophia, why can't you be more cheerful, just like your brother? Her voice echoed in my mind, a melody of disappointment I couldn't ignore. In those moments, I wished the ground would swallow me whole. It felt easier to vanish than to confront the relentless comparisons that left me feeling invisible. The silence of my childhood was deafening, like a heavy shadow pressing down on my shoulders. Without comforting words to soothe me, conversations at home revolved around what was wrong. Each moment devoid of warmth became etched like a mantra. I am a disappointment. The words haunted me, wandering through my heart and tainting my self-image. Love is conditional, I thought. It existed only if I could be perfect. In those recollections, I could almost taste the bitter rejection, tears choking a child longing for affection, a child who yearned to be heard and embraced. The silent scream of anguish within me deepened into an unquenchable desire as I grew older. Every critical comment from my mother shaped my understanding of love and acceptance. The incessant need for validation morphed into a haunting melody trudging through my psyche. You are never enough unless... Time passed, yet the shadow of inadequacy hung over me, a constricting garb that suffocated my spirit. With each new relationship that approached, I resisted the warmth of connection, instead retreating to the safe cocoon of longing for praise, as if those words of my mother still reverberated behind closed doors. "If you have nothing good to say," her mantra recycled in my heart. It was as if tender love always lay just out of reach, a mirage that vanished when close enough to grasp. How could I possibly love anyone when I couldn't find love within myself? The shadow of inadequacy loomed larger, wrapping my spirit in a straitjacket of expectations and fears. That night, as I listened to the rain painting my window with delicate patterns, my thoughts delved deeper into this labyrinth of pain. I recognized the emotional extremes I had allowed to govern my existence, the precious potential suffocated beneath layers of fear and suppression. A small spark inside me whispered, what if embracing my inner child was the path out of this darkness? Tears flowed freely now, each drop a release for those forgotten feelings. I envisioned that young girl behind a forced smile, desperately seeking love. A wave of compassion surged within me, a kindness I had long denied. This is who I really was, I thought. The essence of pain that mirrored a profound longing for acceptance. Embracing that truth didn't seem like a lost cause. It felt like an opportunity to rewrite the story dictated upon me. Thinking of the celebrations that had shaped my years, the joy I had tried to exude while feeling the chill of isolation, somehow fractured the narratives I had constructed. The painful realization that each moment of joy had cost me my voice began to settle heavily in my heart. And now, at last, I was at a crossroads, staring at the path that I could take towards healing. Suddenly, the rain ceased, yielding to a silvery moonlight that found its way through the barriers of night. I sensed a shift. Perhaps something was changing inside me. By rescuing that little girl I once was, I could confront not only the shadows of my family, but also the shadows I bore within myself. How could I confront the depths of my emotional landscape when I had spent so much time shielding it from the light? It was time to face the very foundations of the pain I had buried. My fears, my longings, and my childlike whims were not to be seen as weaknesses, but as a journey toward reclaiming my narrative. If love was conditional according to my past, perhaps it was time to alter that condition in favor of unconditional acceptance. I am not my past, I resolved. As I allowed that thought to settle within me, I felt the first stirrings of liberation, an awakening that whispered hope and possibility, urging me to uncover the light that had always been there, waiting to be embraced. As dawn broke the following day, I felt a sense of urgency stir within me. The stillness of the morning resonated with a peculiar energy, as if the universe itself whispered promises of change. This newfound restlessness urged me to seek answers beyond what my family had taught me about love, success, and acceptance. An idea ignited in my mind like a beacon. What could Carl Jung reveal about the shadows that had overshadowed my life? I had heard about Jung's teachings during a group therapy session. Phrases like shadow and individuation lingered in the air, encapsulating a wisdom I yearned to unravel. Intrigued by the idea that our darkest corners could be illuminated, I grabbed my phone and began searching for one of his books. The promising title, Man and His Symbols, caught my attention, suggesting a journey into the psyche, a journey I desperately needed to undertake. As I dove into the pages, each word resonated deeply within me. Jung wrote of the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves that we often refuse to acknowledge, traits and emotions we despise or fear. Suddenly, it was as if Jung was peering directly into my soul, calling me to confront the essence of my own shadows. I could feel the quivering tension in my chest, a combination of fear and anticipation. I absorbed the words eagerly, often pausing to reflect on the revelations unfolding before me. Was I trapped in a cycle of self-denial, turning away from those aspects of myself I had long shunned? The notion that darkness need not be eradicated but integrated was simultaneously terrifying and liberating. It made me wonder if my internal battle to please my family had obscured the true me beneath layers of conformity. One passage struck me particularly hard. Jung suggested that in acknowledging our shadows, we could reclaim our lost power and authenticity. This concept flickered like a candle in the darkness of my heart, a small yet fierce flame that began to illuminate the way forward. It became clear that I had spent my life in a constant state of contrast, curating the image of the perfect daughter, the ideal social worker, all the while repressing the authentic Sophia, who craved love not just through achievement, but through being. "Who am I?" I whispered to myself, grappling with the weight of the query. It was time to look beyond the facade I had so carefully crafted. I knew that facing my shadows wouldn't be easy. It would require relentless courage and compassion. Inspired, I decided to start journaling, hoping that writing could help untangle the jumble of emotions swirling inside me. Each night, I committed myself to excavating the fears and desires I had hidden away. As the ink flowed onto the pages, I uncovered the fragments of my past, my every frustration, each bit of unworthiness, and the silent screams that begged for attention. Those pages transformed into a safe haven for my long-buried self. I recalled times when I felt the most alone, be it my mother's dismissal at family gatherings or instances where my voice was drowned out by others. What had I really felt in those moments? The more I probed, the more I uncovered my little girl's yearning for connection, feeling the need to shout, "Here I am! I exist!" Each revelation was akin to sunlight piercing through the dense canopy of trees, illuminating forgotten memories laden with pain, yet sculpted with yearning. Jung's insights on the shadow empowered me. I began to recognize my feelings of inadequacy, not as punishments, but as invitations to explore further. Perhaps, in embracing my pain and acknowledging the hurt and anger I carried, I could actually open the door to liberation. It was in this rediscovery of myself that I started to feel an internal shift, a burgeoning sense of strength and resilience I never anticipated. With each passing week, as I delved deeper into Jung's teachings and my own psyche, clarity began to emerge. I felt less like a victim of my family's expectations, and more like an explorer charting new territory within my heart and mind. The questions that once felt so heavy shifted into a sense of agency. I could mold my identity as I saw fit. And while the journey ahead was daunting, I now had a sense of purpose, a map guided by Jung's light to navigate through the dark shadows of my past. Standing in my small living room, I realized I was on the brink of profound transformation. The quiet confidence I felt began to urge me forward. With my pen in hand and Jung's wisdom flowered within my heart, I vowed to explore even deeper into the darkness I had long feared. If I could willingly accept and embrace my shadows, perhaps I might finally discover the light that has been begging to shine within me all along. As the days turned into weeks, I began to notice a subtle yet profound transformation within. My journaling sessions had become sacred rituals, a space where I confronted not just the past, but also the echoes of my present. Each time I opened those pages, I initiated a dialogue with my younger self, with my shadow, and with the parts of me I had long deemed unworthy. The words began to flow more freely, without the oppressive weight of judgment or fear. It was during one particular session that something inside me shifted dramatically. I was writing about the myriad ways I felt held back by my family's expectations. The moment I wrote the words, "I am not enough," searing pain coursed through my body, manifesting as a tight knot in my stomach. Instead of brushing it aside, I paused, allowing myself to fully experience that discomfort. With Jung's teachings echoing in my mind, I recalled his assertion, "What you resist persists." What if I let go of the resistance? I thought, feeling my heart race. I closed my eyes and envisioned that little girl again, sitting in the corner of the family gatherings, a mere observer of the celebration that felt so distant. She was my shadow, my unacknowledged self, everything I had buried out of fear. I could feel her sadness, her frustration, and her suffocating need to belong. "It's time to acknowledge you," I whispered, internally. In that moment of connection, I began to weep, tears streaming down my face as the full weight of my childhood flooded back. I could see the weight of my mother's expectations pressing down on me like a heavy cloak. The more I allowed myself to feel the sorrow and frustration that had been suppressed for so long, the more significant the shift in my perception became. I wasn't merely reliving sadness. I was processing those feelings, inviting them to exist alongside me, rather than shoving them into a corner. I wrote furiously, detailing the comparisons I had always felt. The light was always on my brother, while I lived in the shadows. My hands trembled as I penned down the poignant truth. I had built a persona as a shield, not a reflection of who I was. This revelation was both frightening and liberating. I was beginning to recognize the elements of my psyche that were complex beings, influenced heavily by familial dynamics. I also recognized how those dynamics had birthed complexes. Those lingering feelings of inadequacy and unworthiness now had names, manifestations I could confront. It became clear, these complexes, particularly the people-pleaser and the perfectionist, had driven my life's trajectory for far too long. I had become a built-up version of who I thought my family wanted me to be, rather than embracing my authentic self. I recalled how often I felt torn between my own desires and the relentless need to earn approval. My need to please had become an instinct, forged in childhood amidst the sea of my mother's criticisms. Then, I stumbled upon Jung's thoughts on projection, recognizing how I had projected my fears and insecurities onto those around me. I thought of how I often entered rooms brimming with anxiety, anticipating negative judgments that were likely more reflective of my insecurities than reality. This realization fed into the clarity I was seeking, a potent breakthrough that ignited my determination to face the distortions head-on. Each journaling session led me deeper into exploration. I worked on identifying what aspect of my shadow needed focus, realizing that as I unearthed repressed emotions, I was freeing myself from an internal prison. I began to envision these experiences as stepping stones toward understanding, ultimately embracing my complexities, rather than cowering from them in shame. One quiet evening, after an especially exhausting day, I took my journal and settled into my reading nook by a window. I felt compelled to write a letter addressed to my mother, the woman who had unknowingly become both my architect and my jailer. The words began to pour out as I described the impact of her criticism and the ways it had shaped my life. I told her about the little girl who had longed for love and acceptance, the little girl who felt that her worth depended solely on her achievements. "Dear Mom," I began, "I have spent years feeling lost and inadequate, striving to meet an idea of perfection that has always felt just out of reach. The echoes of your voice continue to ring in my ears, telling me how I could be better. But now I want you to know that I am enough just as I am. I am reclaiming my voice, and with that I intend to heal. You have played a role in shaping who I am, but I am ready to take ownership of my identity and find space for the part of me you never saw." This admission was cathartic beyond measure. I realized that genuine healing began with acknowledgement and acceptance, not just of my feelings, but also of the impact my family's dynamics had left on my psyche. I was no longer just a passive player in their roles. I was stepping into my power, wielding my pen like a sword to carve out my truth. Reflecting on my journey with Jung's teachings, I felt overwhelmed yet inspired about what was to come. His words transitioned from mere text on a page to guiding principles illuminating my path. I faced my shadows with renewed boldness and self-compassion. Each challenge I had faced before was now slowly morphing into an opportunity for growth. It was there I reached a pivotal moment of clarity, where I understood, their shadows do not define my light. Felt deeply, this realization became a source of solace as I reconciled the past that lived within me. transforming pain into a wellspring for strength. For the first time, I envisioned the beauty in my journey, echoing not only the struggles of a child hoping for approval, but also the narrative of a woman reclaiming her power. Ultimately, I understood that acknowledging my shadows wasn't an act of weakness, but rather an act of courageous self-love, an essential step toward embracing who I truly was, starting to shine my light unapologetically into the world. As the weeks progressed, I found myself diving deeper into the journey of self-discovery. My evenings became a sacred time for introspection and journaling, where every written word transformed into a stepping stone on my path toward authenticity. With each entry, I confronted not only the echoes of my past, but also the shadows lingering in my present. I was no longer writing just to express. I was crafting my own narrative, redefining what it meant to be Sophia. Driven by a burgeoning sense of agency, I made a pivotal decision. It was time to reclaim my identity. No longer would I be relegated to the shadows of my family's expectations. I sought therapy, specifically Jungian therapy, to further understand the complexities of my psyche. In my sessions, I articulated the emotions that had long been trapped within me. Speaking out loud transformed those bottled feelings, from whispers of inadequacy to affirmations of strength. With each session, I peeled back the layers that had hidden my truth for so long. One particularly impactful session involved a direct confrontation of my feelings toward my mother. I learned to voice my experiences instead of merely reliving them. "I don't want to be perfect," I confessed, feeling both vulnerable and empowered. For the first time, I allowed the truth of my emotions to flow freely. Tears streamed down my face as I spoke of the suffocating pressure I had endured, all in pursuit of an unattainable standard set by her. "This has impacted my ability to love myself," I added, letting the weight of those words settle into the room. As I navigated through these difficult conversations, I felt a fierce determination building within me. I recognized that while my mother had influenced my perception of worth, I had the power to redefine my own narrative. I wanted to share this realization with her, to invite her into my journey of healing and growth. Days turned into a blur of contemplation as I prepared for the conversation I desperately needed to have. In my mind, I envisioned expressing everything clearly, sharing how her critical words had catalyzed an internal struggle. I imagined her defending her actions, perhaps unable to fully process the impact of her expectations on me. Yet deep down, I held on to hope, the hope that this dialogue might pave the way toward reconciliation and understanding. Finally, the day arrived. With my heart pounding, I invited my mother to my home. As she entered the familiar space, it was as if the weight of years of unspoken words hovered in the air. "Mom," I began, trying to steady my voice, "there's something important I need to discuss." Drawing a deep breath, I laid bare my feelings. I explained my journey toward self-acceptance and how her voice had echoed in my mind for years, often in the form of harsh criticism. I emphasized that it wasn't an attack on her, but rather a necessary step for my healing. "I've spent my life feeling invisible," I told her, my voice trembling with a blend of fear and conviction. "I need you to know how this affected me." To my surprise, her expression shifted from confusion to recognition. "I never meant to hurt you, Sophia," she replied, genuine remorse creeping into her tone. "I thought pushing you would help you succeed." I could see the flicker of realization in her eyes, a recognition that perhaps her intentions had not aligned with the outcome. This moment was both cathartic and enlightening. I felt lighter, as though a burden had been lifted from my heart, and I also saw the opportunity for healing between us. "But it's not about perfecting myself for you anymore," I continued. "I want to be accepted for who I genuinely am. I'm reclaiming my voice." The conversation revealed layers of vulnerability in both of us. I saw the connection deepen as we each shared our regrets and fears. My mother revealed her own struggles with the pressures placed on her during her upbringing, acknowledging how they had shaped her parenting style. It was a revelation that, while painful, allowed me to see her through a different lens, a woman navigating her own insecurities while trying to raise a daughter. As we spoke, I felt a surge of compassion. Our pasts, once barriers, began to dissolve into shared understanding. I realized that healing does not mean forgetting the scars, but embracing them as part of our stories. As I looked into her eyes, I was reminded that we were both imperfect beings striving for love and belonging. With the conversation drawing to a close, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I was finally taking a stand, embracing my authentic self in the presence of the woman who had, for so long, contributed to my struggles. It was exhilarating, yet humbling to share my journey openly, paving the way for mutual healing. In the weeks that followed, I steadily integrated the lessons learned from my mother into relationships beyond her. I began to set boundaries with friends and family, a newfound ability to balance compassion for myself with the love I felt for others. Each time I said no, I experienced a small victory, lifting the layers of expectation that had once shackled me. My interactions evolved. Friends remarked on the change in my demeanor. I was more present, more engaged, and most importantly, I was shining my light unapologetically. As I continued to embrace this new identity, I felt empowered to inspire those around me, encouraging them to explore their own shadows and step into their authentic selves. Ultimately, I came to understand that healing is not about reaching a destination, but about embracing the ongoing process. Each step taken along this path reaffirmed my worth, allowing me to reclaim the beautiful complexity of who I am. In that journey of reconstruction, I no longer saw myself as defined by my past. Instead, I stood proudly in the truth of my own narrative, a vibrant testament to resilience and self-discovery. I am whole. I am enough. I repeated to myself daily, a mantra that reflected my commitment to authenticity as I journeyed forward into a bright and open future. With every sunrise, I stepped closer to the woman I was always meant to be, learning to cherish not just the light, but the shadows illuminating my path to healing. With the foundation of my healing solidified, I entered an exhilarating phase of transformation. I had unlocked doors within myself, revealing not just my pains, but also my strengths. Each new day presented a challenge to further practice the freedom I had discovered, a commitment to embrace my authentic self wholeheartedly. Self-affirmation rituals became essential to my daily routine. Every morning, I would stand before the mirror, gazing into my own eyes and reciting powerful affirmations. I am worthy of love. I have the strength to shape my life. Initially, it felt odd and forced, but with repetition, I began to feel the words resonate deep within. I was no longer merely speaking affirmations. I was reclaiming my power. Empowered by self-acceptance, I recognized that I needed to address the dynamics within my family as well. The changes I experienced with my mother had set a strong precedent, but I understood that my journey required courage to confront the unspoken expectations and conditions I felt from other family members. Sunday dinners were filled with laughter and joy, but they also existed within a vague undercurrent of tension. Unarticulated emotions lingered on the peripheries. One particular Sunday, I felt compelled to rise above the surface-level conversations and speak openly. "Can we talk about how we communicate?" I asked, my voice steady but filled with nervous energy. The room grew quiet and surprised glances were exchanged. This was a pivotal moment for me, and I knew it was crucial to articulate my feelings candidly. "I want our family to create a space where everyone can share their feelings openly," I continued, my heart racing. I spoke of my experiences, the profound pressure I had felt being in the shadow of high expectations. As I shared my truth, I saw their expressions shift: curiosity, understanding, and eventually support. My willingness to be vulnerable paved the way for a dialogue rooted in a desire for collective growth. The conversation wasn't easy, but it was heartening to see my family begin to acknowledge their roles in perpetuating a dynamic that often stifled rather than nurtured. It felt liberating to cultivate an environment of acceptance and honesty. The shadows began to dissolve as we ventured toward connection. In the weeks that followed, I practiced these new skills mindfully. I engaged in expressions of honesty with friends, colleagues, and others, allowing my authentic self to shine through. I practiced setting boundaries, learning to assertively say no when necessary. Each act reinforced my belief in my own worth. Each time I honored my needs, it reinforced my commitment to myself and my emotional well-being. One unforgettable moment came when I reconnected with an old friend who had once left me feeling lesser than. We met for coffee, and recalling the past brought a mix of anxiety and excitement. This time, I was determined to speak my truth. "I want you to know how your actions affected me," I said. Rather than allowing resentment to guide our conversation, I focused on sharing how our friendship had impacted my sense of self-worth. I expressed my need for deeper, honest connections. To my surprise and relief, my friend responded with empathy. We both realized how much our individual shadows had influenced our relationship. We ended the meeting with a feeling of depth and reconciliation. It was a significant step toward healing, not just for myself, but for our friendship as well. However, I faced hurdles along the way. Doubts crept back in at times, bringing whispers of inadequacy, particularly during family gatherings where old patterns threatened to resurface. I felt overwhelmed at times, yet instead of letting those feelings defeat me, I reminded myself of how far I had come. In those moments of doubt, I reminded myself of my journey, the shadow work I had embarked on alongside the insights I gathered from Jung's teachings. I embraced these feelings with an understanding that they were a part of who I was, but did not define my current self. Engaging with my shadow through acknowledgement rather than suppression allowed me to experience the emotions, moving through them without fear. It was within this acceptance that I truly began to flourish. Each moment of vulnerability, each honest conversation transformed from potential conflict to an opportunity for healing. I learned that emotional freedom required acceptance of both my light and dark aspects. I was learning to embrace the complexities of my identity rather than shying away from them. I expanded my journey by volunteering in my community, leading workshops focused on mindfulness and self-acceptance. Witnessing fellow participants explore their shadows and challenge their narratives filled me with joy, amplifying my own healing process. It surfaced inspiration within me to create safe spaces where dialogue about mental health and inner growth could thrive, fostering connection within a wider community. As I stepped more authentically into the world, I was reminded of the sparkle I had felt beneath all the expectations, my individuality shining brightly as I embraced empowerment and acceptance. My favorite mantra. In breaking the silence, I found my voice, echoed in my heart wherever I went. It fueled my resolve to share my journey with others, encouraging them to explore and embrace their unique paths. Transforming my life became an empowering anthem of liberation. I now understood that freedom rests in the embrace of my complete self, where acceptance of my past, along with the strength I had gathered through my pain, is celebrated. As I moved toward this bright future, I remained committed to honoring my entire self. Gratitude filled my heart as I realized this journey was an ongoing practice of love of self, love for others, and a commitment to nurturing authenticity in every relationship. With every sunrise, I stepped closer to fully becoming who I always was meant to be, a vibrant expression of resilience, freedom, and wholeness, no longer shrouded in shadows, but shining boldly in the light. As the seasons turned, the fruits of my healing journey began to flourish. No longer shrouded in shadows, I stepped boldly into my new identity, embracing the woman I had always been meant to be. Each sunrise felt like a reminder of my commitment to authenticity, a daily affirmation that I was worthy of love and acceptance. Volunteering in my community became a crucial part of my transformation. I organized workshops focused on mindfulness and self-acceptance, creating safe spaces for people to explore their own shadows. Witnessing participants confront their pain and share their stories filled me with purpose and joy. Each workshop ignited a fire within me, a determination to foster connection and community healing. In these sessions, I often shared my own journey, illustrating the power of vulnerability. In breaking the silence, I found my voice, I would tell participants, encouraging them to embrace their unique paths. I learned that authenticity flourished not just within me, but also in the collective spirit of those seeking growth together. The energy in the room became electric, a bond forged through shared experiences and the courage to open up. As I continued to nurture these connections, my family dynamics shifted as well. I initiated heartfelt conversations with my relatives, moving beyond superficial interactions to address our deeper feelings. Our family gatherings transformed into opportunities for dialogue and understanding. I observed my mother beginning to share her own struggles and vulnerabilities, a significant step towards healing our relationship. This newfound openness helped dissolve the barriers that had divided us for years. Through honest conversations, we began to acknowledge our shared vulnerabilities, recognizing that we were all navigating the complexities of love and acceptance. Each dialogue became a stepping stone, reinforcing the foundation of support and compassion we were building together. Through this practice, I cultivated immense gratitude. The challenges I had faced became sources of strength as I learned to view my past through a lens of courage rather than shame. I no longer defined my worth by my fears. Instead, I embraced my entire story, the pain, growth, and resilience that shaped me. One beautiful evening, during a gathering with friends who had supported me throughout my journey, I felt an overwhelming sense of connection. We hugged, laughed, and shared heartfelt stories, and I understood that these relationships were vital to my healing. I was surrounded by people who celebrated my authenticity and mirrored the love I had nurtured within myself. As I moved forward, I found myself drawn to creating more workshops and support groups, further extending my reach. I focused on themes of emotional liberation and acceptance, inviting individuals to explore their identities without fear. I witnessed profound transformations within participants as they began to embrace their own journeys of self-discovery. Each person was a testament to the notion that healing flourishes when we are held in a safe and nurturing environment. With every interaction, I felt the mantra, "I am whole. I am enough," resonate deeply within me. This declaration guided my actions and reminded me that my journey was ongoing, a continuous practice of nurturing love for both myself and others. As I stood on the precipice of my next chapter, I looked to the future with hope. The legacy of healing I was building extended beyond my individual experience. It became a shared narrative, woven through the lives of those I encountered. I felt empowered to stand as a beacon for others, inviting them to embark on their own journeys of exploration and acceptance. In this moment, I embraced the fullness of who I was, an embodiment of resilience and vulnerability, carrying the light of my journey into every space I occupied. As I continued to grow, I cherished the wisdom of my experiences, knowing that the shadows I once feared only enhanced the brilliance of my true self. As I blossomed into this new identity, life transformed into a vibrant expression of love, healing, and authenticity. A reminder that our journeys are interconnected. Together, we create a tapestry of resilience, compassion, and light, illuminating the path toward a more conscious existence. No longer living in the confines of my past, I celebrated the richness of life with open arms, ready to embrace whatever came next.